everybody, and welcome back to the Enterprise Dish. We have got a rousing battle for you on this episode. Well, not so much, but my buddy from the great Northwest, the piney, mountainy, wet Seattle, is back with us, Mr. Nick Fillingham.
Hello to you. Thank you for having me back.
It is good that you are back. We are happy you are here. Nick, I want to bring up a question that gets asked to us on occasion. It's not all the time, but it's definitely out there. For those who aren't familiar, there's primarily two versions of Office. There's Office 365, which we've talked about a lot on this podcast, but there's also a version called Perpetual, or it's more than likely known, the thing you go to Staples, you buy it in a box, and you install it, and it's running locally. And there is a version called Office 2019 that you can go buy and install at your corporation if you want to do that. Now, Nick, the question becomes, why would you pick Perpetual over 365 or vice versa? Let's lay out the battle entrance, if you will.
Yeah, I heard you in your intro talk about a battle, which is interesting. I'm not sure. I'd maybe
battle might be overselling it slightly.
Battle. We can battle it out. I mean, I can play one side. You can play the other if you want to role play that.
The problem is 365 would win.
But yeah, no, it's a question we get a lot too. Or I should say there are certainly folks out there who are not aware actually that there are these multiple ways that you can use Office, or you have multiple options perhaps for how you take and use the Office product. And so there are really now two very firmly established paths. As you said, one is called Office Perpetual or Office On-Prem, and on-premises, excuse me. And the way to think about that is that that's Office where there's a year number after it. So Office 2019, Office 2016, Office 2013, 2010, 2007, 2004? Was there a 2004?
2003, or was that server 2003?
Oh gosh, I can't remember.
Yeah.
They're usually in 3-year increments. But if you see Office and then a year number after it, that is the Perpetual or the on-premises version of Office. And you when you buy it, you're actually buying it outright. You are buying the license to perpetually install and use that software. And so a lot of the times that it's pretty expensive. Like, you can spend, a couple $100 on an Office Perpetual license, but it means that you have the installation media, you have the CD key or the license, you install it on your PC, and you can use it forever. It doesn't run out. There's no, at no point are you not able, does your license say you can't kind of use that software anymore? It does stop getting supported at some point. And we're actually running up against that now for Office 2010. Office 2010 is going to end extended support in October of 2020. So a little bit over a year and a bit from now. But Office 2010 will no longer be supported, which means that if you have your Office 2010 perpetual license, you can still use it. You are fully licensed, enabled to use that software, but there will be no more security updates issued for that software. So if there is an issue found, it sort of won't necessarily be addressed or patched. But yeah, we have these two paths: Office Perpetual or on-premise, and that's Office with a year after it. And then we have something called Office 365. And depending on how you are purchasing Office 365, we also sometimes say Office 365 Pro Plus. But really those two paths are Office 365 and Office Perpetual. And the best way to think of it is that Office Perpetual, or Office with a number, with a year, is a snapshot in time of some of the features that were available for Office. So Office 2019, for example, at some point in 2018, the Office engineering team looked at all of the features that existed across the Office suite, and they kind of took a cut of those products at that point in time. And they said, okay, this is the code base we're going to use for Office 2019. And then what they do is they actually strip out a bunch of stuff. They strip out a bunch of the real-time collaborative elements. They strip out some of the cloud connectivity. They strip out anything that really has a hard dependency on a cloud service or an online component, because Office Perpetual, Office on-premise, is actually it's designed for customers that don't really have a regular or ready access to the internet. They need a sort of offline solution. They need tools. We sometimes joke and say that Office 20XX or 200X, 20XX is Office for submarines. It's for
that makes sense. Yep.
It's for organizations, for groups of PCs that are either not connected to the internet or have some kind of limited or sporadic connection to the internet. So they need offline functionality as opposed to online functionality. And if you think about it, that's sort of a limited subset of customers. So like an oil rig's a great example. An oil rig out in the sea probably has a satellite-based internet connection, which is probably very expensive to operate. So you don't want to have a heavy dependency on an online service, whether that's storage or compute. And so an offline or an on-premises version of a piece of software like Office 2019 would be a great solution for that kind of customer. For the rest of us that do have an internet connection and are almost always entirely connected to the internet, the best solution, the best Office product is called Office 365. And so what that is an evergreen version of Office. The updates to Office are released monthly. So every month there are new features and updates to features that are released. And a lot of those features are cloud connected or connect into some kind of cloud service, whether that's storage, whether it's AI, whether it's data, whether it's analytics. A lot of the Office 365 functionality is a kind of a yin-yang connection between an app that's running on your device that talks to and engages with a service, some kind of service that lives in the Microsoft cloud or can connect to other cloud services. So a great example would be OneDrive, right? So autosave and real-time collaboration, multiple users on a single file. That file lives in the cloud. Multiple users can connect from multiple different clients from multiple different devices at the same time and collaborate. That's an example of something that you can do in Office 365 that you can't really do in Office Perpetual. There is some limited collaboration in Perpetual. You can kind of check. You could check a document in and out. There is some kind of, two people could type in the same Word document, but you're not going to see what that person's typing. You're not going to see where they are. You would need to refresh the document to see what they added. There's no collaboration in Perpetual Excel. That's only something you'll see in Office 365. So one of the big differences between Office Perpetual and Office 365 is this real-time collaboration. And this kind of this integration with cloud services and cloud functionality. The next differentiation is actually where we bring in AI. So if you're familiar with some of the latest features in things like PowerPoint and Excel, and now in Word, there's a new box, a little button that you'll see up in the top right. It's a little lightning bolt, I think, and we call that Ideas. And Ideas is a set of features where that particular Office app takes the content that you're working on or the data that you're working on and connects it into some AI-based kind of Azure services and cognitive services that live up in the Microsoft cloud and help you do different things. So one example is in Excel, you may have a table with hundreds and thousands of cells and entries. And maybe you have some kind of spreadsheet that's all of your, maybe you're doing a stock take. Maybe you sell something, you have a store or a warehouse and you're doing a stock take. And you have all of these kind of sales data or this inventory data. And one of the things that the Ideas service can do is it can take that data and basically run it against some kind of machine learning models that kind of exist up in the cloud in an anonymous way, not in a way that your data is compromised, and then come back and give you some potential insights that you may not have initially seen. So the Ideas service can help you identify outliers. So maybe you can maybe it's not immediately obvious which is the which is the best selling or the slowest selling, or where are you, where does your inventory not match your kind of run rate? And the ideas service is potentially a way to have a machine, AI or machine learning models help you pass very large bits of data, very large collections of data to kind of find some insights that maybe a human either wouldn't have found, or it could have taken a lot of time and energy to go do that. So that's how we kind of utilize AI and cognitive services in the ideas feature as part of Office. In PowerPoint, it also is a really interesting way that we utilize ideas. I think everyone that's used PowerPoint to create a presentation has started probably with that challenge of, okay, I have a white slide and I have black text. And it's really flippin' boring. Yes, minimalism is great and it can help you, convey your message, but sometimes you need a little bit more. And so what the ideas service can do is it can look for inconsistencies in grammar. So maybe you have a bulleted list where you're not using a period at the end of every sentence, and it could say, hey, look, you used a period here but not here, pick one. Do you want to have a period or no period? And it'll say, oh, I'm going to say no period. And so it'll help you remove those inconsistencies. Maybe you also say, you type the word website multiple times, and in some instances it's 2 words, in some it's 1. It's going to say, look, again, we found some inconsistencies. Which one do you want to pick? 2 words or 1? And so it'll help you kind of go and find that. It can also look for, if you're creating lists, it can identify when a list is has dates or times in it, and it can say, hey, this is not just a list, this is a list with dates. So can I help you arrange this in a chronological way, in a chronological structure that makes it visually much more obvious for what you're trying to convey with this list. It can look for, there's like contextual awareness. So for example, if in that list you are you're using, there's a theme, like maybe you're talking about environmental challenges, and so it can pick out individual words and it could suggest icons that maybe align to those words. So maybe you're talking about kind of hearts and minds or emotions, and it might say, hey, you could use a heart here for this particular thing. Or maybe you're talking about environmentally friendly, and you might suggest like a little tree or a green leaf or something. And so it's a way of utilizing machine learning and AI services up in the cloud to help make your life a bit easier, whether that's all the way from finding analysis and insights in big sets of data in Excel, or making your PowerPoint presentation look more interesting and kind of be more impactful in kind of really quick and easy ways. And that's something that will only ever be in the Office 365 service, because again, it needs a connection to the internet. And it's a feature that sort of gets stripped out when we create that offline on-premises version. So yes, Brad.
I was going to say, I got a question for you.
Yes, please.
So when deciding between these two, questions we have heard is that, hey, I can't move to Office 365 because of the way we deploy things internally, right? We've talked a lot about migration together. But what about those customers who are kind of stuck in that older way of deployment stuff, and they're like, well, Office Perpetual just works this way. Do you have any advice for them?
I do. I think if I can kind of do a callback to episode 2, episode 2, where we talked about the Microsoft 365 Deployment Center and that deployment wheel. And I want to say it's around about step 6 or 7, where we actually talk about Office deployment. And it talks about the pros and cons, or not the pros and cons really, but the differences between deploying Office Perpetual, where that was MSI based, versus Office 365, which is click to run, and the differences between the two, and what tools exist to help you migrate from an MSI deployment to a click to run deployment. One of the challenges that we kind of hear is that, especially if you've migrated from a previous Office Perpetual to a newer Office Perpetual via MSI, that sometimes it can be hard to kind of clean up the old MSI installation and kind of fully remove it from the system. And sometimes there can be some like ghost registry entries and all that kind of stuff. And so the Office Deployment Toolkit, which is, I believe, a part of SCCM, is a tool that IT pros can use to, I think it's like 1 click or maybe 4 clicks inside of SCCM, change from an MSI deployment of Office Perpetual to a click-to-run deployment of Office 365. And one of the checkboxes is, hey, do you want, as part of this deployment, shall we go and uninstall all the old MSI versions of Office and basically clean that device up? And it just takes care of it for you. So that's one of the kind of concerns that some IT teams have, is like, hey, we're used to and we're comfortable deploying a big MSI package that has all the apps and stuff in it. It's just an MSI that we kind of push out and then it kind of gets executed and Office is installed. Moving to click to run is kind of a different process, and we need to change that. And we just kind of acknowledge that. So the tools inside of SCCM kind of help make that easier. But I would encourage you to go back to that deployment center and read through, I think it's step 5 or 6, where you'll learn more about the various ways of deploying Office and kind of the pros and cons of one over the other. The other thing I wanted to add too, which I think I might have missed too, Brad, is that the licensing model is especially for smaller businesses, smaller corporations and organizations, is a bit different. So when you buy an Office 2019, 2016, 2013 license, because that is a perpetual license, you're purchasing it per machine. So you have to buy 1 license for each machine, and you're essentially buying it outright. Now, there might be payment plans available, but at the end of the day, you're sort of, it's a big like lump sum up front to actually buy that software, because you're buying the perpetual rights to that software. So first of all, you're buying it per device. So if, like you and me, Brad, we have multiple PCs, strictly from a licensing perspective, we would actually need to buy multiple licenses for each of us for any of the PCs that we use. And that can actually get quite expensive. So Office Perpetual is a per machine licensing model, especially for smaller customers. It does change as you get a little bit larger. You can get some kind of user-based licensing. Office 365 is user-based. And so you, Brad, as an individual user, would get licensed, and you can install your Office 365 on 5 PCs, 5 mobile devices, 5 Mac devices, unlimited kind of access through the web. You get a ton of flexibility on the endpoints that you use and how you access your Office subscription. And that's the other thing. It's a subscription. So you're not outlaying potentially hundreds of dollars in one go. It's a per user, per month subscription plan, which is, there's pros and cons, but at the end of the day, it's not a capital expenditure, it's an operating expenditure, and you're significantly reducing that CapEx hit, which could be a couple $100 per device, down to an OpEx hit, or an OpEx cost, which is potentially, $10, $15, $20, depending on the type of Office 365 license that you get. So we think there are real benefits in.
So that's a perfect segue. So one of the questions is, and maybe you can do this at a higher level, but there are multiple
OpEx too. I'm sorry. Does everyone know? People know what that means?
Why don't you give us a quick?
Well, maybe I don't know. Capital expenditure versus an operating expense. Is that okay? We don't need to dive into. I'm sorry.
No, well, this isn't the CPA podcast, although. But my question was, and we often hear this as well, they're like, well, there's multiple SKUs or tiers, if you will, of Office 365. Can you give us the 50-cent version of, E3, E5? Is there an E7? Like, what's going on with all those?
50-cent version? Go Samo, it's your birthday. We're gonna party like it's your birthday. Was that 50 cent?
Yeah.
Was that ludicrous?
No, that's 50 cent. You were okay. right on the money, if you will.
My pop culture references are on point. I actually forgot your question. What are the differences between
the different SKUs or different tiers of Office 365?
Yeah, there's quite a few. There are business editions. There are enterprise editions. There are academic editions. And then there are consumer editions of Office 365. So consumer editions are going to be for individuals or for homes, so family homes. So where you're an organization, but only in the family sense. You're a family unit, and so there's multiple people in the family, and so you multiple users inside that family. I'm not an expert there on the consumer side, so I might put that to the side. In the commercial space, We really think of it in terms of academic institutions. We think of it as public sector or government institutions. We think of it as small businesses, and then we think of it as enterprises. And so if you're a small business, then we have SKUs that will have the word business in them. And those additions, SKU, again, if you've heard me say that, that's an acronym for a stock keeping unit. It's just a way of denoting individual offerings. We have business SKUs, and those are actually limited to 300 users per tenant. So those are specifically for small businesses of 300 employees or less.
Okay.
You can actually have, you could have multiple Microsoft 365 or Office 365 business subscribers with multiple tenants. It's just that an individual tenant can't have any more than 300 users. So if you really wanted a business offering, but you had 500 users, you would simply have to split them in across 2 tenants. That's how that would work. But if you have 500 users, you're really an enterprise. You're a smaller enterprise, but you're really an enterprise. And so we have 2 main offerings there, which is E3 and E5. There are E1 offerings. E1 offerings are essentially sort of web only. They're very kind of sort of limited subset of features, and they're sort of a niche scenario. The most common is going to be E3 and E5, and they're probably the ones that your customers, well, excuse me, Brad, the readers, listeners, and viewers of Petri, who are working in IT teams, are probably in enterprises who would want to look more at E3 versus E5. The big difference between E3 versus E5 is really around the complexity of the compliance and security management and the compliance and security functionality. So if you are in a business that has just more kind of I don't want to say generic, but kind of more standard levels of risk, standard levels of kind of complexity. E3 is kind of built for you. If you are a business in a segment or in an industry with higher levels of risk, higher levels of compliance, kind of complexity and regulation and requirements, then E5 is probably the product to look for. And another way to think of it too is a lot of the E5 features are, especially in the security space, are around kind of investigation and remediation and kind of proactive hunting. So if you are in that elevated risk, you probably have a SecOps team, or you may outsource to a SecOps partner, and they need remediation tools, investigatory tools, hunting tools, to maybe go on the offensive, or at least do pretty detailed investigation if some kind of security breach, some kind of a security attack occurs. It's much more than that than E5. I'm really heavily paraphrasing here, but I think for your readers and viewers, it's going to mainly be the business SKUs if they're under 300 seats. And I would look at either Office 365 business editions or Microsoft 365 business. And then if they're above 300 seats, they should really look at E3 as the baseline, and then based on their security risk profile and their kind of compliance requirements, definitely look at E5, which is the kind of the kitchen table. That's the soup to nuts. That's everything. That's the kitchen sink.
Very cool. That's actually a pretty good description and a breakdown, Mr. Nick. You did a wonderful job there.
Oh, good.
But we are at the back of the book, and I think we're going to talk about books here. We were talking right before the show started about books that we have read. Nick, I don't know if you have anything good for the dish, but I certainly have one if you do not.
Well, you know what? I haven't finished, but it's on my. I'm having a summer vacation, and I pledge to you, Brad Sams.
Yes.
Samo, that I will finish a little book by the name of Beneath a Surface.
Oh yes.
I believe you may know the author.
Yeah, he's a good friend. He's a friend of.
And I have a sort of an excuse for why I haven't finished it. I pre-ordered it when you did your pre-order push over the Twitters. And I pre-ordered it as a Kindle edition. Okay. And my Kindle died. Oh. And so I am having to use the Kindle app on my iPad, which is fine, but I don't
Yeah,
really
it's
like reading
just not the
books on
same.
an iPad. So what I may do is I actually have the phone number of the author.
Oh, do you?
And I think I'm going to send him a little text message and see if he might be able to send me a paperback copy or something. Well, I don't know.
I
See.
believe.
I don't know. We'll see.
He might have changed his number. I don't know.
But you know, but no.
Actually, we'll connect afterwards. It's,
all right, that's fine. Your people can talk to my people.
Yeah, I think that's the easiest way to do it.
But what I'm actually reading at the moment is I am addicted to the Expanse series.
Okay.
Are you familiar with this?
I know of it, but I have not read it.
Yeah. I think it's James A. Corey. Hang on. The Expanse. I'm looking this up right now.
Mm-hmm.
The Expanse books. James S. A. Corey is the author. It's actually two people. That's really? It's like a shared pen name, and I think we're up to book 9 called Tiamat's Wrath.
Mm-hmm.
I'm halfway through it. There is a TV series adaptation that was on Sci-Fi and I think has moved to another platform now. It is amazing. If you like kind of space opera, like kind of sort of in the not too distant future, space exploration where they try and be as faithful as possible to the limits of physics. Especially early on, like they really try and be respectful of what physics can and cannot do, and so they have, I think there's a lot of research, and they have a lot of specialists that help them kind of discern whether or not the thing that they've come up with is has some roots in being physically possible. So it's fantastic. I absolutely love it, and I'm reading Tiamat's Wrath at the moment, and then I will get my hands on hopefully a physical copy of Beneath the Surface, and I will try and finish that. The other book I'm reading is The 11 Nations of the United States. Have you read that one?
I've not read that one.
It's just I'm learning about the history of the US, the country that I live in and have lived in for a long time now. And it's a kind of a really interesting look at as the US the United States was kind of founded, and all the various migrant groups came into the country and brought with them their various kind of cultural and social and capitalistic and religious kind of baggage with them. How that has sort of created, I think it's 11 sort of like. They call it. The author calls it nations, but it's just a really interesting kind of way to kind of look at the history of the US. How about you, Brad? What are you reading? What have you read?
So when I was on vacation, I guess 2 weeks ago now, I read a book called Creative Selection. I'm going to butcher his last name. It's a guy named Ken Kosendia, I believe.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah, no, you did it right.
Close enough. So this is a guy who is an engineer at Apple, and it doesn't sound all that interesting the way I'm going to describe it, but he built the keyboards that you use on these devices. Now, he started at Apple, and the book kind of walks through his journey of, like, he was the second person hired to build the Safari web browser.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it starts kind of at the Safari web browser and then all through the development of iOS. Like, effectively, and this is self-promotion, if you like the book that I wrote, mine is a third-person perspective of building of the Surface brand. His is a first-person perspective of building the iPhone.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah. And so when you said building a keyboard, not a physical keyboard, a software keyboard.
Yeah, the software keyboard that's on the iPad and on the iPhone, and all the different challenges that you might not think about. It's not super nerdy, and he does a good job of explaining like the technical details and everything else in a way that's approachable. But I just thought it was kind of interesting to see how all the iterations and just the thought process about how they built the iPhone or Purple.
Is there an acknowledgement of other players in the technology space that may or may not have had on-screen keyboards for many years before the?
They do talk about it, but not in the way you might think.
Oh, okay, interesting. I can think of one company at least that had had functional on-screen keyboards for a while.
Yep, you're not alone there. I would read. There's the book.
It's Microsoft. I'm talking about Microsoft.
Yes.
No, we're not. No, we've gotten over it.
The book isn't full of a lot of self-back-patting, but I mean, there's definitely some of that Apple, like, we solved all the problems in the world type mentality.
Well, cool. No, it sounds really interesting.
It is a good book. I highly recommend it.
I do have a stack in front of me I'm trying to get through, so we'll see.
Yep.
So
very cool, Nick. Well, we appreciate you stopping by today. This has been a good battle, but not really a battle, if you will, of the different versions of Office, and helping. Hopefully this will help some people either decide what version to go with, maybe a tier, or think about migrating off of Perpetual to 365, Nick. But we very much appreciate you taking time out of your busy day. And everybody else, there'll be some helpful links down below. Don't forget to check those out. Hit that subscribe button, and we'll catch everybody else right back here next time on the Enterprise Dish.